Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual event. Ooh, hold on. Sorry. I am having feedback.
We can hear you. Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Sounds
can.
okay.
Yep.
Sounds better. Sorry about that. All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual event space at Books and Books, your locally owned independent bookstore in Miami, Florida. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties on my end, and it's better now. Okay, so tonight I'm especially excited to present our author, Kristin Cashore, just because she's one of my absolute favorites, and the Graceling Realm books mean a lot to me. And they've been a place for me this past many months to escape to for warmth and comfort. I've been rereading them, and it felt like such a big reward to be able to pick up Winterkeep just a few weeks ago, and I'm sure a lot of us feel like that. So tonight she's going to be speaking with her agent Faye Bender and editor Andrew Carr, and I'm sure we can expect some publishing talk, hopefully some agent author secrets and general like Graceling Realms inside scoop stuff. So I'm going to quickly tell you about our speakers. Kristin Cashore grew up in the Northeast Pennsylvania countryside as the second of 4 daughters. She received a bachelor's degree from Williams College and a master's from the Center for the Study of Children's Literature at Simmons College. And she has worked as a dog runner, a packer in a candy factory, an editorial assistant, a legal assistant, and a freelance writer. She has lived in many places, including Sydney, New York City, Boston, London, Austin, and Jacksonville, Florida. And she currently lives in the Boston area. Her epic fantasy novels set in the Graceling Realm, Graceling, Fire, and Bitter Blue, won many awards and much praise, including picks as ALA Best Books for Young Adults, School Library Journal Best Book of the Year, Bookless Editor's Choice, and Publishers Weekly Best Book of the Year. In addition, Graceling was shortlisted for the William C. Morris YA Debut Award, and Fire received the Amelia Elizabeth Walden Book Award. Faye, her agent, is a partner and co-founder of the literary agency The Book Group, with a focus on strong collaborative working relationships with her authors. Faye represents fiction for readers aged 8 to 108. A Colorado native, Faye has lived in New York City for 25 years and currently resides in Brooklyn with her husband, 2 children, and a dog. And then our moderator tonight is Andrew Carr, the executive editor of Dutton Books, an imprint of Penguin Young Readers. Lastly, before I hand you over to Kristen, Faye, and Andrew, a couple of things about your screen as you see it now. In the bottom right corner, you're going to see a button that says Ask a Question. This is what we're going to use for Q&A. So if you want us to see your question, this is a place to drop it so that it doesn't get lost in the chat. Next to that, we have a donate button if you're able and willing to just help us keep things going at Books and Books. And then, of course, directly below us is the big green button. This is our most important button of the night, and it's where you can purchase copies of Kristin Cashore's books and also support us. We ship worldwide, and we can offer store pickup locally. So that's it for us, for me, and I'll see you guys in a little while. Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey. All right.
Yay. Yay.
Oh, it's so good to see you guys.
You too, Andrew.
I know.
It's I'm unspeakably excited to be able to get this conversation started because I think it's always really special to I've worked in publishing my whole adult life essentially, and one of the things that I've treasured throughout is listening to people who have really long-standing, successful creative partnerships reflect a bit on their experiences together over the years. And I think whether you know it or not, everybody who's on this this call tonight is in for a treat because that's exactly what you two have. This is a relationship that goes back over 15 years and includes, I'm sure, many excellent stories, including, I am led to believe, the manifestation of at least one husband, which I'm sure we'll hear about later. But I don't want to get too far ahead of things. So Faye, could you tell us a little bit about when you first met Kristin and took her on as a client?
Sure. There was a friend of mine from college, the lovely Amy Yee, who was living in Manhattan in an apartment as one did post-college with, I don't know how many roommates. There were a lot, right?
Well, when I was living with her, there were three of us total.
Oh, okay. I had the impression there were like 5 people living with her. But
That might have been the
was
situation
there
she
with
moved
you.
out of to move with me. I don't know.
Got it. So she was living with you, and she knew, of course, that Kristen was a writer and that I was an agent. And she asked if she could put us in touch, and so she did. And I had this very firm policy in place that I was very sure of, that I didn't represent fantasy, which was really only because I had never grown up reading fantasy and I didn't feel super connected to fantasy or identified as a fantasy reader. And so I kind of went into it with this, like, well, I'll read it. I think Amy is so smart and she thinks so highly of Kristen, so I'll read it. And then, of course, fell madly in love.
It's really interesting to hear you say that way back in 2006. I mean, we think of YA fantasy as something that's sort of very firmly established now, but in 2006, it was really a different time on the bookshelves and for readers. So Faye didn't think she wanted to represent fantasy. Kristen, did you know you were writing YA fantasy?
So I did know. It wasn't my first book that I tried to sell. The book before that was middle grade realism, which never sold, and I'm relieved now that it didn't. I did know that. I did suspect, I coming from Simmons, where I've actually taken a class called fantasy and a class called YA literature. So I knew, because of the age level and because it was a coming of age story, and because it had fantastical elements, that was probably where it would land. Although I will say that this is jumping ahead, but some of my European publishers publish it for the adult fantasy market. So yeah,
it's always a fraught question, and I think one that evolves over time for an author. Are you writing? Genre can be a moving target,
right?
Sometimes that target is moving away from your vision.
Yeah, it's also a mystery, and it's a romance.
Exactly. That was the thing, I think, as a reader who came to it as, with no real background in fantasy, what I was struck by was how relatable it all felt, and how there were large chunks of it that read as literary fiction, and parts that felt like a thriller and parts that felt like a romance, and that there were so many different categories kind of wrapped up in it.
I think if I'm sure many people on this call have had this experience recently too. If you've read through all the books again and doing the Graceling reread, one of the things that you'll notice, aside from the elements of fantasy, of mystery, of literary fiction, you'll notice how important communication is in these books. Profoundly important, all forms of communication, spoken and otherwise, but just like basic human communication. So many plots, including in Winterkeep, just turn on people using their words and saying what they want.
Can I say one quick aside?
Yeah, go ahead.
There was one really cool video recently that somebody did about reading all 3, the Graceling, Fire and Bitter Blue, rereading them in a weekend. And one of the things that she said that I liked the most about Graceling, and about why I think the Katza and Poe relationship is so lasting and so impactful to readers, is because so often in YA fiction, there's this push and pull with miscommunications and, broken promises and all of the things that happen in relationships all the time. But that what seems so different about Katza and Poe is that they are so committed to communication, and they are so honest with each other and clear with each other, and that's something that isn't the norm in romances in YA.
Yeah, I think that's actually
interesting.
True.
Yeah, I think that sometimes those miscommunications and misunderstandings they feel like plot devices. And that doesn't feel right to me. Like, if there's gonna be a miscommunication, it's got to be something that's really happening for a reason. And it's really interesting to hear you guys say this, because I didn't consciously decide, well, communication is going to be the important thing, but it's super important in my life. So I think it just has worked its way into my books.
Well, and it
in a
must be
very-
super important in your working relationship between you two, right?
Oh,
to be able
yeah.
to talk.
Yeah. Faye hears everything. She handles it so
great.
well.
It's part of the author-agent relationship, I think, is this very honest back and forth where you know the names of my kids and my husband and my dog, and I know the details of your life and your husband, and the relationship goes so far beyond, you know, whatever the particular book might be.
Yeah, well, I think writing is just really emotional. And so if you're going to get honest about how vulnerable someone's feedback made you feel, or about how you're having a hard time writing right now because what you're writing is too much like something that's happening in your life or whatever, I feel like I can tell Faye that. I don't know where she gets the time, because it's not like I am Faye's only writer, but you respond so warmly and with so much empathy that I just, and it's also really nice to have, you know, you really are my agent, like my agent for so many good things in my relationship with my publisher, but also just to have a relationship with someone who's outside the publisher so that I can go to you and say, well, what do you think about this, you know? And also sometimes to serve as a little bit of a, okay, wait, Kristen, I understand that you're upset about this or that, you know, not that you ever say it that way, but I think I come to you sometimes knowing I'm upset right now, but it's not actually logical. And I need to tell someone, and that is Faye, lucky Faye.
But this is how good you are at communication, because you come with that. It usually comes with that preamble where you'll
That's
say,
true.
I'm irrationally upset about something, and here's what it is. And so, you know, it's not like I have to carefully tiptoe around it and
good.
convince you that we should wait to reach out to your editor or whoever, you know, whatever it is.
And I hope you feel, I think you feel, and I hope you feel like you can be straightforward with me too. Like you're not going to crush my feelings if you tell me something that's difficult to hear.
No, of course I do. And I think that's part of successful long-term relationships, whether working or otherwise, is knowing that, you know, we really can trust each other in that.
Yeah.
One of the things that has always delighted me about relationships I've had in publishing with authors and colleagues is that eventually you get to this phase where you're doing work and you're not talking about the work itself. Like you kind of back into it. If you're able to have really broad-ranging creative conversations about things, to the outside observer, to civilians, it seems like you're not doing the work, but you kind of are. It's one of the magical parts of this, is that you can be talking about something that moved you, whether it be music or art or just an experience you had. And if you can get to a place where the people who are helping you make your book like know how to talk to you in that way, then it all becomes work. And
right, in the good way.
And then at that moment, none of it's work, because it's just all this sort of joyful process of making a world. And one of the things that's really remarkable about the Graceling Realm is how long-standing this world is, and how these characters have evolved to such a degree that it's like, we were talking about genre earlier. I feel like when I'm reading these books, I'm reading Kristin Cashore books. Like the genre kind of falls away to the side, and it becomes like, I think the word you used earlier when we were emailing about this was like the authorial dream. Like it's your vision. And that must be, I think, you know, for Faye particularly, to have seen that grow and solidify over years must be incredibly satisfying and moving.
It is. It's incredibly satisfying and moving, and it arrived almost fully formed. I mean, Kristen, for you as a writer, I read Graceling in 2004 or 2005 for the first time. We're not totally sure which, because we can't access those like very, very early emails anymore. But a long time ago. And it really did seem from that moment forward, you had such a clear authorial vision, and, you know, your books are your books, and you're always so clear about, and, you know, you will see this firsthand soon, that you are very clear about what works for you in terms of edits and changes, and, you know, how you might adapt something and what doesn't, and you really don't waver in that. And I think that's pretty remarkable.
Thanks. That's just, I didn't like you have, I didn't know that was unusual.
Well, that is one of the funny things about this whole business and people's experience of it. You can be in it a long time, and you just have your eyes on your own paper, and you evolve a process with your editor and your agent, and it's yours, and you know it well, and then you get a glimpse at somebody else's, and like, wow, they make a book in a very different way than I do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary in some ways for me, at least. I'm looking, there are no guardrails here. There are no actual rules. I haven't stumbled onto the official way to do it. But at the same time, it's very freeing too. And I think for somebody, for a writer who's you don't just write in the Graceling realm. You have wider interests that that kind of freedom to be yourself within a multitude of genres. I think that must have a similar feeling. It's both scary and freeing.
Yeah, it feels like such a gift. Like I never doubt that an idea I have, I never doubt whether it can be a book. Like I never doubt whether I should go ahead and try that. I just feel so lucky. And that's, that's been phase support as well.
I don't know about luck. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite things about Winterkeep is that, and not all of it ended up in the final Winterkeep, but one of my favorite things is that you had the creativity and the vision and the bravery to write from the perspectives of humans, also from telepathic boxes, also from an extremely neurotic and reclusive sea monster, also from, and this didn't make it into the book, also from telepathic sea cows.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. The fact that you were willing to just I'm going to go ahead and try this and let's see how it works. And if it hits, if it lands. And I just think that's super cool that you're willing to kind of push yourself and stretch your muscles that way.
Thanks. Yeah,
it really is. Fun. I mean, I've never read an early draft of Winterkeep. I just got to go straight into the book. But you had the sense of if I were to ask Kristen a question about any of these secondary characters, she would know, and we would know how these people feel. And that's to me, that is the hallmark of a great experience of a novel, is this sense of absolute trust that it's not like a Western set where you could just push over the saloon. There's nothing behind it.
There's real brick back there.
No, there's real brick behind it. There's
well,
there's stuff behind the bar.
We'll see how hard if you push. We'll see. I'm definitely there somewhere. Eventually I'll get to the place where it's oh, yeah. Also, can you remind me what that character's name is?
Yeah. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Which and Winterkeep does, I should remember that many haven't yet had the pleasure of finishing it. It has a lot of points of view, and they. Do you remember which was the initial one? Which was the spark of those 5?
I think the spark was actually Nev, who didn't end up with the point of view in the final version.
I wondered if you were going to say that.
Yeah. I think so. The book always opened, or at least in the beginning with the first draft. I don't remember each draft to draft, but it always opened with the sea creature. But that was moving me toward Nev, who, and then Lovisa as well. But Nev is a little easier for me to write, I think, because maybe she's more like me. I'm not sure. Yeah, and in fact, I had been working on the book for 4 years before Bitter Blue came into it, because in the first draft of this book, my carryover character wasn't Bitter Blue. It was Saf and Sky. It was a different book in the beginning. I didn't write for 4 years straight. I was working on Jane Unlimited, but I had gotten to, actually I checked this, I had gotten to page 261, and I realized I have an unsolvable plot problem here. It is actually unsolvable, or rather, it's solvable, but the way to solve it is to go back to the beginning, get rid of Saf and Sky, rethink this plot. And you know what? I wanted to write this story about Bitterblue anyway. Maybe this is the book. Maybe it's Bitterblue who goes over to Winterkeep. So Nev, Lavisa, the fox, and the sea creature all came in before Bitterblue ever did. And the silver cows as well. That's what they're called, right? Silver cows. Their name changed a lot. It's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. Like, names change so much that sometimes. And also, I stopped working on this book a long time ago. You know, I've been working on something else, so it's embarrassing, the little details that leave your mind.
I'm gonna just take a quick glance at some of the questions that people have put in the chat, and there are some really great questions here. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. In Graceling and Fire, pregnancy is a topic that impacts the main characters. Does this impact the love story aspect of the stories when writing? I think that's what it says, yeah.
So does it impact the...
Well, I think they're trying to ask about like the awareness of pregnancy and fertility in the book.
In terms of
the relationships,
using birth control, or in terms of where the characters want to go. I'm always thinking about that. Like, I think it's really important to me that my characters are thinking about it, and either, I mean, so far, I think when it's come up, maybe I'm forgetting someone, but my characters sort of know where they stand on that issue, or that I've consciously decided they don't know. Like, even if a character doesn't seem to be thinking about it, I've sort of thought about the fact that they're not thinking about it. Mm-hmm. It's really important to me, just because I think it doesn't show up in books enough.
No.
It's something, you know, I'm not writing to teach a lesson or anything, but I you know, my young women are the type of young women who are going to be thinking about these things.
But I like that you did. I really like that you did that. And you could have easily, I mean, in writing fantasy, you make the rules, right? You make the world, and you could have created a world where, you know, pregnancy only happens when the moon is full, or pregnancy only happens when, you could have come up with any kind of, you know, explanation for not needing to get into those kinds of conversations. So I think the fact that you do is great.
Thanks.
Well, and between Graceling and Winterkeep, the progression of that, like that conversation gets richer and more interesting. Like when we've read Winterkeep, like the conversation about the tea and the size of the dose, and like it's like as you engage with that particular theme in your work and you go back to it over and over again, it's just there's just more and more rewarding food for thought there that feels so authentic to the world and the characters, and to like your point of view about, again, back to communication and transparency and being honest with people.
Yeah, I mean, and not to delve into like a big pile of crap, but like, you know, I was raised super, super Catholic, and there was no communication about these issues, and there was no transparency. And so I think that's part of the reason it became so important to me to like acknowledge the importance of this in the world. So, you know, I think you have touched on something that's sort of reveals the source of one of the things that's really important to me.
Mm-hmm. And another really excellent question that people keep voting up, so I'll ask it. Since two of the POV characters are older now, noting Bitterblue and Giddens' ages are well above, how does this affect young adults, as in the writing and editing and the marketing of the book? And I just want to add to that one of the things that I always look for in YA fantasy is whether the fantasist takes the time to invent the concept of adolescence, because YA isn't like, to be a teenager isn't like a biological fact. It's a thing that a culture makes up. Like, we create this sort of waiting room between childhood and adulthood, and like that. Like, I've always felt like your books have wrestled with that concept, and to me, that's where their that's where their YA-ness comes in more than in the point of view. Characters age so much as in the world of the book is engaging with the idea of that liminal space between dependent child and independent adult. And whether that ends at age 18 or whatever else isn't so much as important as that wrestling.
I feel like you just answered that question for me, Andrew.
Oops, sorry.
But no, but you
You
did.
did.
But you everything you were saying, I was like, yeah, that's what I wish I were saying. Like, I really think that, Gideon, I think he's 31 or 32 in this book, but Gideon is working through some adolescent things, not because he's immature, just because, adulthood is just more, it's more of the same stuff. You just get a little more experience with dealing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels
Yeah,
like
he's been
YA
busy.
can address the sort of seismic changes in someone's life when you're kind of grappling with the immaturity to maybe not want to deal with it and the maturity to be able to deal with it. And that doesn't only happen when you're 16 or 17 or 18 or even 19, which is still adolescent. So, it seems very limiting to both the authors and the readers to put that categorization in such a narrow place.
Yeah.
And I think it does a disservice to people who've experienced trauma to make it a purely sort of numerical category, because trauma has an effect on all of your main characters have experienced tremendous trauma in their lives, and the becoming an adult, becoming a fully self-actualized adult in the face of what they've experienced is not it's not something that just sort of moves linearly or in a tidy, quick way.
Yeah. It can take a really long time to even realize what happened to you, and then to realize, oh, some of my behavior is kind of bad because of maybe because of that. Oh, I can actually have all these feelings, but start behaving better. And, just gradual little shifts and changes. I mean, you're right that adolescence is not this little contained thing, and it's not a bad thing or a childish thing. Not that there's anything wrong with children either.
Well, and I think that's your books often have very full age spectrums in them. You get to see all stages of life and thinking of, all of them really. They all have these characters. You have great young children who are interesting or terrifying sometimes. Preteens, and then you have actual old people who have full lives and aren't there just to provide comic relief, and who have made mistakes and are still coping with it. And I think as a YA reader, I find that extremely reassuring, because it doesn't do the thing that that I like less, where we just isolate adolescence from all other stages of life and let stuff happen, kind of behind the closed doors of a boarding school or something like that. Although you did manage to write a dorm novel in a way, without killing off all the parents.
Yeah, that early.
You broke a main rule of, I think, YA dorm novels, in that she goes home all the time.
Yeah. But see, in the beginning, when Nev also had a point of view, it was a little bit more of a dorm novel. You saw her classes, you saw her life trying to deal with little guy in her room all the time, breaking things, and
it's so delightful.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to look at some more questions, but we've teased them about the marriage manifestation, the husband manifestation, so I think you have to tell that story.
Okay, so I was maybe in my mid-30s, and I had been single for a very long time, and I had been very happy with that. Really loved being a single person, but then I got to a point where I was like, I think I might want a partner. And so I made this long list of qualities that this person had to have. It was preferable for them to have, and then this list of qualities they could absolutely not have. And I was talking with Faye about this on and off. And it's things like someone who's kind, someone who knows how to deal with conflict, someone who can communicate, someone who can cook, someone who I don't have to explain to them that children's literature or genre literature is in fact art, and at a certain point, Faye was like, this person is so rare. It's like pots of gold and unicorns. And I was like, oh, unicorns. And I caught on that. And I was like, oh, I like that. I'm looking for a unicorn. And I started to refer to my future husband, I wasn't thinking of him as my future husband, but he is now my husband. I was starting to refer to this person I'm looking for as my unicorn. And I even got this little unicorn figurine, and I would just tell my friends I'm looking for my unicorn, and they would ask me, how's the unicorn search going? And then I met this guy, Kevin, and we'd been dating for a few months, and things were going really well. He was really different. He was actually one by one checking off the things on my list. And one day we were hanging out, and I was playing Scrabble on my phone, because I always play Scrabble on my phone. I play against the expert Scrabble computer, and I had a really bad tray. I couldn't put anything down, and finally I figured out that I could put down the word Lin, L-I-N. That was the only thing I could put down, so I put it down. I didn't even know if it was an acceptable Scrabble word, so I put it down. The Scrabble computer accepted it, and I turned to Kevin, because Kevin's last name is Lin, L-I-N, and I said to him, did you know that your last name is an acceptable Scrabble word? And he said, oh, yeah, it's a Chinese kind of unicorn.
Isn't that amazing?
And so I was
that
like,
is a good story.
So I was like, oh, that's nice. And like, I ran in the other room, texted a few friends, calmed myself down, because, it was too soon for me to be like, you are my destiny. So came back, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Yep. You now live with a unicorn.
Yeah.
That
This is why I say that Faye manifested my husband.
Well, that's actually I think if I'm reading things right, a pretty decent segue to the next question, which is about Deeth and an update on Deeth.
Oh.
Because speaking of marriages that are somewhat miraculous, I'm assuming that is from the Lord Peter Wimsey books.
Wow, good call, Andrew. You caught it.
Which I would have to, otherwise I would not be married anymore, because my wife introduced me to those books. That is why I know who Peter Deeth Breeden.
Peter Deeth Breeden Wimsey. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so someone wants an update on Deeth?
Yes, they want to know the progress of the recreation of the text in the library.
Oh,
very good.
Well, I mean, I would have to. I don't like to stand outside the books and explain what's happening in the books. So maybe that's something I'll pick up at some point. I will say that that Lovejoy is in Winterkeep, Deeth's cat, and the only reason I didn't bring up Deeth is that I knew I would have to explain how his name was pronounced, and it would sort of be this like weird like non sequitur in the middle. So I was just like, I'll just refer to him as the librarian until there's a point where he's an actual character.
For the questioner, I took tremendous confidence in Lovejoy's presence as a good sign. That if Lovejoy's out and about, then Deeth must be doing well. So
yes, I
that's my headcanon.
Yeah.
And then somebody else asked if you have a playlist for your books. Do you have and I'm just going to expand that. Do you create a playlist for your working drafting life? Are you one of those authors, or do you do one after the fact that's sort of representative, or neither?
I mean, it really differs book to book. I don't write with music, but if I encounter a song that I feel relates to what I'm writing, then I will listen to it a lot. I haven't done that super recently that I recall, but with Fire, there was this reel that I had on CD. I mean, this was so long ago, by this fiddler in Prince Edward Island who I saw perform while I was there, that I would just listen to over and over again, because it was very melancholy, and it sounded to me like I imagined the Delian Lament that Fire was playing on her fiddle. And I remember I was living in Jacksonville, Florida at the time, and I would and that was a really hard time, that was a really hard book to write. I was kind of going through a little bit of a hard time, and being stuck inside Fire's head was really hard. And I would just lie on the floor and listen to it over and over and over again. It would kind of give me some comfort and some energy to keep writing. And then with Bitter Blue, there's a Patty Griffin song called Cold as It Gets, I think, that is just so, if anyone, you know, wants to go check that song out, it's so, I mean, I feel like it's about Bitter Blue. And I'm pretty sure I didn't know that song before I started writing. So that song, then I remember I was living in Cambridge, and I remember walking along the river and listening to that song. So often it's just like one thing that I just listen to over and over and over again. But not while I'm writing. I can't write with music.
Silence.
Yeah, in fact, I usually wear earplugs. Like distractions and things just like they ruin the rhythm. And also when you put earplugs in, suddenly you realize, oh, I'm alone with my thoughts now. It's sort of like this, everything has gone away. Okay, now I can work.
Speaking of fire, this question has gotten a lot of upvotes. Your books are some of the best written, most authentic feeling love stories I've ever read. Fire and Bring always make my heart melt and are my favorite romance in fiction. What are some of your favorite romances in fiction, aside from Peter and Harriet?
Yeah, I mean, that is, in fact, I used to have a little quote on it's not here anymore, but on my computer that was it's not about romance, but I think Harriet says to Peter that it's going to hurt like hell to write this book. And he says, oh, damn it, now I can't remember what he says, but it's something really great. What does he say? He says something like, if it didn't, it wouldn't be a good book, or something like that.
Well, they have my favorite line of theirs about their relationship is where I can't remember who says it, because that's how they are in their banter, but it's let others have the harmony, we'll have the counterpoint.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Which
yeah.
I love, because their relationship isn't about being in perfect harmony all the time, but they are perfectly matched. And that's like, they communicate. They're not just saying the same thing, but they are they can. And I feel if people who don't know, these are 80-year-old British mysteries. They are not fantasies, set post World War I. But I actually reread what's it called? It's the
Which one is
hysterical. Yeah, it's the one Gaudy Night.
Gaudy Night.
Really,
I was gonna.
Really long one.
That's
right after I read. Yeah, but it's again, this is the idea that there's always a mystery at the core of your books. Like Gaudy Night is explicitly a mystery, but it's also explicitly lots of other things at once. It's a very genre hopping mystery, and then it's also kind of academic satire. And
that's one of the things I love about her books.
Mm-hmm. This is Dorothy Sayers, by the way.
Yeah, Dorothy Sayers. Yeah. I know. I can't remember what the question was. I just want to ask you if you've read the Jill Patton Walsh. Did Jill Patton Walsh wrote the later books, finished the unfinished books, and I wonder if you've read those.
My wife told me I was not allowed to.
Okay. I understand. No objections. Anyway, favorite romance.
Who are the other favorite? Yes, favorite.
Yeah, I'm gonna confess that whenever I'm faced with this kind of question, my mind goes blank and I can't remember anything.
I'm hoping that nobody asked me, because immediately I can't think of anything.
I mean, certainly Anne and Gilbert, but there are so many others, and I'm later on I'm going to kick myself that I can't remember, but I need a little prep time for that kind of question.
Well, I think oddly, when authors, at least in my experience working with lots of other authors, they don't like the really memorable kinds of searing pairings that they create. They often don't do it on purpose, or they kind of surprise themselves. Like they didn't go into this trying to write a character that is like forever and ever true love, but by doing other things, they find their way to each other. And I don't know how you actually do it, but that's how it feels with your books.
Yeah, I don't want to, give any big spoilers about Winterkeep, but there was things when I was writing Bitter Blue that I was not expecting, that actually at a certain point, my editor at the time, Kathy Dawson, was like, you know what? We need to make her a little older because I'm getting these vibes between these characters. And I was like, you're right. Okay, she was 16 in the original book and we made her 18. I feel like I should stop talking because of spoilers. Yes. Never mind. You're right. Like sometimes I go into it planning something and other times. But also when you go into it planning something, you still have to let it happen organically. Yeah. You have to find the way for that to happen or else it's going to feel forced.
Yeah.
Which can happen. It can happen in revisions. I think it was pretty late in Jane Unlimited that the vibe started to work. The vibe started to work there because I just didn't have the time. That book was so complicated. I just didn't have the time to focus really on deepening characters until I had everything else set up and in place. Anyway.
A whole bunch of more questions just popped up.
Thank you to the people who found that song. I'm watching the things go by in the background. I was like, someone's asking about the fire song, and I'm thinking, I can't remember, but apparently I blogged about it once.
You blogged about it.
So thank you for
that. Somebody wants to know if we will finally learn the names of all of Pov's brothers.
Oh, God. Fantasy names are so hard. So
that's where I wanted to go with this. Like, how do you have the naming gene? Do you feel like you have, like, 'cause I think there are some authors for whom they just.
No. It has become such a problem too because there are so many people now. Like, when will we? Maybe I guess you will learn the names of Pov's brothers at some point after I figure them out. And especially with the Lenin people, every name has some sort of color referential. So it gets really hard to keep. Isn't there? What did I name the Leonid ambassador to Winterkeep? Oh, that's Periwinkle. Perry. Yeah, there was a whole thing about that. Oh God, I need another one of these names. Help me.
Well, and I thought Periwinkle was really interesting because the masculine ending in the Keepish world is an I for most of those names, right? And that's we more readily associate that with if you're shortening is a more feminine ending. I always enjoy sort of following the logic, like the governing logic over all of the names in the books.
And I try to create a little bit of one, but I also often am just trying to keep all the women's names from ending with A, even though a lot of them end up doing it anyway. Like I'm trying to play around. I'm thinking about it and trying to play around with it, but it is really, I mean, it's when you get the right name, it feels really good, but it's definitely become a bit of a chore.
Okay. Oh, no, this is a question that will certainly have a little bit of yearning. How does travel inspire your writing?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I tell them about the Arctic.
I have actually two big answers to that. I planned my first main planning of Winterkeep I did while I was in Iceland. I took a trip by myself to Iceland for a couple weeks with the intention of driving a little bit every day and then stopping and working.
You got stuck on a snowy road.
Yes, I did not see the teeny tiny sign that said that a road was closed, and I just drove my little car up this extremely snowy mountain, and the snow got deeper and deeper, and on one side there was like a sort of an embankment, so if I went over that I would roll into a ditch, and on the other side there was a sheer cliff with no guardrail or anything. It was in this little stick shift, and like eventually I was like driving in second gear, and then finally I was only driving in first gear, and luckily the car stalled, because when the car stalled, then I had a moment of being like, what the fuck am am I doing? I can't get over this mountain. The problem was that like the end of it was like so close. Like I was gonna get to the next road. I just had to get over this. And I'd stopped the car and I realized I can't go forward. The road is so thin that I can't turn around. I am not backing this car back down the mountain. So I called Icelandic 911. I was so embarrassed because the first thing they asked me is, where are you from? And I had to say, I'm American.
I don't pay attention to what's around me.
But then, you know, when these guys came and they rescued me, and they were awesome. So one of them, like, I got in the truck with him, and the other one backed my car. Like, together we backed, like, their truck and my tiny car all the way down the mountain. And I was watching it slide over the snow, and I was imagining this man is going to go over the cliff. He probably has, like, 5 children. I'm killing their father. Like, it was so horrible that actually I forget what point I was going to make.
Travel, your next big trip.
Right.
Yeah. So
where will you go when you can
a little
go?
bit of non sequitur. I'm not actually sure. So I have actually been going to Vermont because I'm so lucky. My husband's family has a cabin at the top of a hill in Vermont. So I have been going there occasionally. It seems like for a good long time that's going to be, you know, it, but that's a lot. So, I mean, I have a huge bucket list. But I should probably mention the Arctic. So the Icelandic trip inspired a lot of the landscapes and so on. But then I did this artist residency on a tall ship in the Arctic a couple Octobers ago. October, I think it was into November. It's called the Arctic Circle, and it's this artist residency. I was on this ship with maybe 24 other painters, photographers. There weren't a lot of writers. There were maybe 3 or 4 writers, filmmakers, and we would sail around. We were in Svalbard, so up in the Arctic Circle, way above Norway, and we would sail around the islands and make land once or twice a day, and have some time on the land. Whenever we were on the land, we had these like awesome young women with rifles who would go out and like check for polar bears, and then they would create this triangle, and we had to stay within the triangle, like within the triangle created by the armed women the entire time to be safe from polar bears. And we just saw glaciers, and we saw whales and walruses, and it definitely had it touched a little. So I had already written Winterkeep, but I was revising it. So I think I changed some of my landscapes or brushed them up a little bit. But I mean, Andrew, you probably know where I'm going with this. This book really influenced. It was there that I planned the next book, which is about Hava, which is in revisions with Andrew right now.
Oh my goodness, it's so exciting. Which does kind of lead naturally maybe to a closing question, and a question that other people have been asking is, this is not the last Graceling Realm book, is it?
No, it's not. I know it seemed like I stopped, but it never stopped for me. I was planning this book before I finished. I was planning Winterkeep before I finished writing Bitter Blue. It just took a long time because I was doing other things as well, and because I ended up having to start fresh even when I had written almost 300 pages. So there's another book already with the first draft done, and I have other ideas. So I have other characters whose points of view I want to write from. So and I have this whole expanded world now. Like I have more options. I have more political options because now, you know, when I was first writing the books, it never occurred to me that they couldn't be kingdoms, because that's what you put a fantasy in. You put it in a kingdom.
Right.
Now I've thought about it a lot more and realized, well, why did I do that to these poor people? Now I have a world that has more possibilities and, you know, a lot of things I could do. So I'm ready. Whenever it calls to me, I'll be ready.
Well,
Hopefully it calls often. And
Yes.
fun.
And surprisingly, like that it's a world that can still surprise you, that that you can get lost on mountainsides, and the nice Icelandic AAA folks can come and save you, and give you a new story to tell.
I didn't mean to go off on that tangent. That had nothing to do with anything.
I thought you were going to say that you pretended to be the Queen of Mancia and offered to do some magic for them.
But somebody in the comments said that sounds like that story sounds like a metaphor for something. So maybe we should all think about that.
The whole time I was waiting for them to come, the sun was going down. I was like, how much water do I have? How much food do I have? How's my battery in my phone? Do not call your mother. Do not call your mother. Right now, she does not need to know the situation you're in. Call her when it's over. Like the whole time, that was my internal litany.
That's good. Well, I think we are about out of time. I don't know if Christina is going to come back in from Books and Books. Yes, there she is. Wow, magic! Thank you. Thank you for hosting us.
That was excellent. Thank you guys so much. I had so much fun chatting in the chat room and listening. So thank you so much, Kristen and Faye and Andrew, for hanging out with us tonight. Thanks to everybody who tuned in from all over. I did find out that we still have signed copies of Winterkeep. So they're at some of our different locations. So if you would like a signed copy from us, let us know in your order notes, and we have a signed copy for you. And I want to also shout out to our sales rep, Donnie K, who helped me make sure that I got Kristen Cashore for our store, for a virtual event. I love these books like everyone else here tonight. And this one especially was just the timing of it was like kind of special. So
thank you.
All right.
I'm so glad.
Hope you guys have a good night.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.